All right, happy Tuesday. Tuesday Night Lights is back for the 8th edition of TNL this spring, and tonight's a very special broadcast because TNL is partnering with Colleague Madness, the $2,000 64-team single elimination tournament meant to replicate March Madness that's going on tomorrow night and Thursday night. But in partnership with TNL and Colleague Madness, we have two play-in show matches that are happening tonight on my stream, one at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, one at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, featuring two teams from the SEL and two teams from the Great Lakes CRL fighting for a spot in Colleague Madness. At 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday Night Lights, following the conclusion of State of the SEL, we have George Mason and Florida Southern duking it out in a best-of-7 to see who will advance to play St. Clair Green in round 1 of Colleague Madness. And then immediately following that, we have Northern Illinois and Michigan State White competing to play Northwood Blue in round 1 of Colleague Madness on Wednesday evening, akin to the play-in matches that you see in traditional college basketball March Madness. So I'm super excited to have this partnership. It's a really cool event, Colleague Madness, and I'm glad they're looping in SEL, Great Lakes, and Tuesday Night Lights to see who gets one of the 64 spots in this $2,000 tournament that is one of the more unique formats in collegiate esports. And since this is one of the more unique events in collegiate esports, I figure I'll make this one of my more unique TNL preview videos, as I will drop my predictions for my show matches tonight, right now, but I am going to be using the rest of this video to try and predict the entirety of the Colleague Madness bracket. And there is a lot to get through. So I've already kind of filled out some of my first round matchups, so we're going to change scenes right here and get into the predicting. I think I've filled out about half or so of the first round matchups so far, and I'm going to fill in the rest live right now, starting with FIU and Radford. This is a really interesting match between two teams that are kind of cusp colleague top 48 rosters. I think they cracked the top 48, but nothing really beyond that. And so having this as an 8-9 seed matchup in the first quadrant is super exciting, because FIU's making good runs in CRL Opens this season, but Radford is a wonderful showcase of Rhyolite's skill, but how Zeros and Super Smurf unlock the top player on this Radford team, and I think FIU's somewhat similar as well, but 8 versus 9, FIU versus Radford. I think I back Radford here, even as the 9th seed in this quadrant, 33rd seed overall. This is a team that is really fun to watch when they're on point, and Rhyolite can really step up and dominate a series. So I'm backing them to get that win and take on Northwood Blue in round 2 of Colleague Madness. And then Southern Miss versus Bruton Parker Academy, I think could be a toss-up. If Southern Miss have some of the same struggles that they've shown in earlier CRL Opens, where they're losing to teams like Robert Morris in the upper bracket, which is insane. And I've heard it's ping issues, but whatever it is, that should never be happening. So for Southern Miss, if those issues crop up, I think Bruton Parker Academy could dominate that series. But Southern Miss in the last CRL Open seemed to have gotten it together, made a decently deep run, and so I think they do take down BPC Academy, but this is going to be close. I think this is maybe a 6 or a 7 game series in round 1, so Southern Miss could be a little bit shaky going into their matchup against Missouri, but we'll talk about that one a little bit later on. Rochester Christian and San Diego State is a really fun one. Two teams really proving themselves this spring. RCU started out on a slippery slope at the beginning of the spring semester. San Diego State, similarly. I think the first time I saw SDSU, Caribou was 0-second psychoing on them to beat them in 6 games on Tuesday Night Lights. But RCU have really gotten it together, and so have SDSU, I think, to an extent. But Rochester Christian are back to achieving the results that are expected of them, especially in Great Lakes. The top 8 roster, keeping it close with your Akrons and Columbias, beating the teams underneath you that you should beat. So I think I do back RCU here, and I think I'm going to finish out this quadrant as well before I do move on to the rest of this bracket. So Northwood, easy win over Radford, no matter how well Radford is playing. And I think Missouri gets the better of Southern Miss. I think BPC Academy might shake Southern Miss a little bit, and then Missouri should have a fairly easy win over UNT. It should keep that momentum going into Northwood, where they do fall flat. I really do back Northwood to make another deep run in Colleague Madness. Same with Fisher, same with your typical favorites here. Maybe outside of Oklahoma Christian, because this is a team that's also had ups and downs, though their ups and downs are still at the top of CRL. They were close to making a top 16 run if they didn't get into the top 16 in the last CRL Open, but Edgewood's right there with them right now. This team's extremely hungry. I think this is where I choose my first upset, or real upset, I suppose, as I think Edgewood is able to beat Oklahoma Christian here. And we'll see what the Eagles can do. I don't think they take on Fisher College with much success, so we do get a Fisher versus Northwood matchup in the top 8. Next quadrant up, though, starts with Fisher Piscados and East Tennessee State. An 8-9 matchup that's intriguing to me because I think East Tennessee State at their peak can absolutely beat Fisher Piscados, but ETSU have not been close, I think, to their ceiling at all this spring, and so I am concerned about them in this matchup. Fisher Piscados, I mean, seasoned players, especially, I mean, Tasek I've been casting for a long time now in the bubble scene, so I think they do get the win here over ETSU. I'm hoping ETSU keep it close with them, but I'm not too sure about that. And in this quadrant, I haven't picked too many upsets. And Florida versus Indiana Tech, I'm not picking an upset either. I got to back my SEL boys here. This is a really intriguing mirror matchup with what these teams bring to the table, because I think Chippy and Bluey for Indiana Tech, kind of the same kind of duo that Larry and Hammy Crackers are for Florida. And I mean, on the back line, Shrew, Raid, and Miller are as stout as they come. And so this is my series to watch. SEL versus Great Lakes, 7 seed versus 10 seed, mirror matchups on the pitch. I back Florida. They've looked better this season, but not by much. I think this could go 6 or 7 here. And as you can see, I didn't have any other round 1 matchups really worth picking upsets in this bracket. I think there are a lot of seasoned CRL teams in this specific quadrant of Colleague Madness, so I don't foresee too many upsets, and I'm going to keep that going with Concord getting the win. Ole Miss, ooh, I think they get upset here, even after the good weekend that they just had. This Ole Miss team is streaky, and after going out the way they did on Sunday with 6 straight game losses, I don't know if they can recover from that super quickly. So I think St. Clair Saints Gold gets the win here, faces Colleague in the top 16 on Thursday. And between Ball State and Florida, sorry Florida, you're running into the runners-up that bracket reset the eventual champions of CRL Open 4. Ball State look really, really good right now. And so do Columbia College. Stockton's been solid, but they haven't had the runs that CC have had, getting to the cusp of the top 8 in CRL Opens this spring. So I think Columbia gets the win there, and even though I said Ball State looks good, this is where I'm picking an upset. Columbia College over Ball State. I love what Columbia College does. I think in a format like this, they play a style of Rocket League that can catch a team out, similar to CRL. I think that's why they've had a lot of success in opens, because they are so demo heavy, so aggressive on your goal line. They could catch Ball State off guard, especially because when I was watching Ball State over the weekend, they let a lot slip over their heads, and that's how Columbia College play. They'll beat you over the top, and they'll catch you from behind as well. It's a deadly combo against a team like Ball State that, even if they look good right now, I think could be vulnerable to counterattacks like Columbia College can deliver. So I'm picking an upset here with pure analytics, and here no analytics needed. Concord gets the win over St. Clair Gold. Concord just wants to win. I think they're gonna be my favorites to win this entire event at the moment. I enjoy watching them play. They have a lot of fun, and that should translate to an event like this. And moving into the Fennec quadrant, St. Clair Saints Green, definitely the favorites here for obvious reasons after winning CRL Open number 4, but this one definitely has some interesting round 1 matchups that I'm keen to eye with upset potential in mind. As Purdue and Davenport, I don't know if it would be an upset if Purdue won here. Really, this is a fairly even matchup, I think, on paper, but Davenport Red are are so solid. I think they get overlooked a lot as a B team. This team was the A team essentially for Davenport before the big boys arrived in Cam and Brock. So I think they take down Purdue here, but it's going to be so close, especially with their potential matchup in Great Lakes Spring Major coming up this weekend in mind. So I think Davenport gets the win there. And then moving along, Northeastern and Boros Blancos. I want to favor Northeastern here. They're a lot of fun to watch when they're on point, but Boros Blancos, if they can make runs through CRL Opens with such consistency like they have been, I think they can beat a team like Northeastern that has pop-off potential, but I think at a baseline, Boros Blancos should get the win here. Again, I'm picking boring brackets, but that's how I tend to look at these events. I typically do favor the team that's higher seeded for a reason, with my occasional upset picks around the block. But Shawnee State and Kaiser, same deal. I think Kaiser can pull an upset here. I think they can eclipse Shawnee State if it's not the Bears' day, but this is a team in Shawnee State that plays solid Rocket League consistently. They've got a dynamic threat up front in Taco Stash and Duckworth, and that should be enough, even on a bad day, to get them through a rough series. So taking on Davenport Black, I think I'm taking them there as well. I mean, with Brock's availability in question, I'm wishing Brock a speedy recovery. Dude, get well soon. Don't rush the recovery. And, well, even if he does, I think Shawnee State could put up a fight against Davenport because their defense, I think, can lock down a Davenport offense that will beat the best of them if they're really on point. But Shawnee State, I'm taking here. I think even if Exile does end up playing, it's going to be a close series because Davenport is just that good. But this is my upset. Shawnee State, I believe in you boys this week. And then Boros Blancos, I wish I could say the same thing, but Akron Blue is just way too solid. I mean, up and down, cemented in the top 8 of CRL for eons since I've been covering the scene. So I think Akron makes a pretty deep run here. We'll see what I decide between them and Shawnee State. But up top, LCU versus Bruton Parker. This one's tough for me. It's super close on paper, 15 seed versus the 18 seed, so obviously it should be close. And I'm going to let bias take over just a little bit. Bruton Parker have been really ramping it up lately within the SEL, within CRL. And LCU were the darlings last season. I think Bruton Parker takes some of that magic away from them. They get the win in round 2. St. Clair Saints Green, they handle Davenport Red easily. I love the Davenport Red boys, but St. Clair looks so good right now, and they will probably beat Bruton Parker as well. I mean, if they're playing in the Cracked Gaming tournament this past week ago, I suppose, you can't say the past weekend, if they're taking that on and winning, they're probably going to be approaching this same event with a similar mindset, and that should bode well as all the chaos unfolds around them. Speaking of Shawnee State, I've got battling above their seeded weight, I suppose, taking on Akron Blue. But again, I'm going to be boring. Akron versus St. Clair in the top 8. Last quadrant, the Dominus quadrant. So I've got making top 8 here. Starting with another 8-9 matchup, Ball State Black versus James Madison. And BSU's been struggling just a little bit recently. They turned a lot of heads when they made a deep run. I think getting close to top 8 in a CRL Open a couple of weeks ago. But James Madison, I think, has been on a pretty big tear outside of CRL. I mentioned it on the Bracket Reveal show, kind of opposite paths. BSU made a lot of waves in CRL. Outside of that, been a little underwhelming. It's the vice versa for James Madison. Not in CRL Opens this semester, but outside of that, in CCS, SEL, they're really taking center stage in a lot of these leagues. So James Madison, I've got beating Ball State Black, and then I've got Akron Gold and Michigan State meeting up. Love my boys at UT Arlington and Arizona, but I don't think they beat the favorites here, as Akron Gold and Michigan State both are in similar positions, I think, in the overall power rankings of the scene, and this is the perfect tournament to prove yourselves in a volatile environment. Show off what you can do, especially with the experience Akron Gold has, and on the flip side, the coaching that Michigan State has. But sticking with round one, Iowa State St. Clair Academy. Iowa State's got the firepower, I think, to beat St. Clair Academy here. And Academy is good. They've got really good practice partners, and St. Clair's a great program. But I'm taking Iowa State. I'm going to make it a little bit interesting now, as ISU have had a pretty good run in CCS. They beat Arizona fairly handily just a couple of nights ago on the CCS stream. Arizona's a solid roster as well. I'm excited to see what Iowa State can do. They're not beating Cumberland. I'm going to go ahead and skip right there because the rest of these matchups are really enticing to me, but Cumberland definitely have high expectations within that program. And I think that's why you see them making runs in high pressure situations like in CRL Open 4, where they have to get wins over West Virginia, even beyond that, to make it to CRL champs. So this is a team that is built to win, and I think they will do so here. Maryville versus James Madison. This is where I think it gets interesting. Maryville has had a lot of weird roster changes for varying reasons this semester. And I think with that, coming into a team that, like I said, volatile format, chaos is bound to happen. It's a crucible for chaos. I think James Madison can win this. I really believe in this team. They can play lockdown defense when necessary, and that could frustrate this Maryville team, who I think are maybe probably used to playing a similar style, as their game sense is on point. But against James Madison, this comes down to the playmakers you've got on your team, and Pigeon is one of the best playmakers in the CRL scene right now. So this may be a lot of bias, especially me being in the SCL. I think James Madison gets the victory here and really starts the chaos going into the final series of Wednesday night between Michigan State and Akron Gold. This is a Great Lakes CRL rivalry right here. They faced off plenty of times in Great Lakes, so it's fitting they get each other in round 2 of Colleague Madness, especially considering this coming weekend they're playing again in round 1 of the Great Lakes Spring Major. So funny little wrinkle right there if both these teams advance like I think they should. But Akron Gold, definitely the more steady of the two teams, as Michigan State still have a bit of inexperience on their side. I think running up against a team like Akron Gold that does have a lot of experience could prove to be a speed bump for Michigan State, but I think just straight up, Akron Gold is the better team. They've got the head-to-head victories. They've got the better results in Great Lakes, in CRL. I think they keep that going here and set up a very interesting round 1 matchup in the Spring Major this weekend for Great Lakes. And then Boise State versus Drexel. Drexel can beat Boise State here. I don't think they will. I think Drexel in this particular matchup is going to struggle a little bit if Boise State is playing lights out offense like they have the ability to. So I think it's close, probably game 6 or 7, but Boise State gets the win here, runs up flat against Cumberland, who have the same things going for them that I've already mentioned. I won't beat a dead horse. And Akron Gold versus James Madison. JMU, off of the highs of beating Maryville, I think lose to Akron Gold right here, who catch some fire for Colleague Madness. And they are, I believe, the highest seeded team that I have going through to the top 8. And I'll stay on the bottom side of the bracket here for my top 8 predictions. I'll go ahead and pick these 3 matchups, see who gets to the grand finals. Starting with St. Clair Green and Akron Blue. I think this is the time for Akron Blue. I'm a little bit biased. I want the American, true North American players to come out on top here. I think this will be a slugfest and is probably what I would say is the match to watch if this is the series of matches in quarterfinals to broadcast. But I'm saying Akron Blue gets the win here, gets top 4, and keeps rising up the power rankings like we know they can. And I don't think that we get an all Akron matchup. I think Cumberland keeps it going all the way to grands. I back them against Akron here. A hot team, high expectations. Coach Claypool has really been making these guys put in the work. I'm talking weight rooms. I'm talking Coach Claypool in Twitch chat, watching his boys compete. Cumberland want to win now. And this is an event that we don't get all the time, where it's outside of CRL. It's not a regional league where Cumberland has still been beating down on SEL competitors and in-conference competitors, but this is a unique event. I know Cumberland wants to win. They're expected to win. I think they're at least top 2 in this event. And speaking of top of the bracket, Northwood versus Fisher. This is another great quarterfinal here. I say Northwood keeps it going, especially after their run through Colleague Madness last year. I think I backed them against most teams, just in general, especially in a bracket like this, especially coming in fresh for Thursday. I think they take down Fisher here. In Concord versus Columbia, this is where Columbia has kind of petered out in a lot of CRL runs this season, where they get right there to top 8. And then they fall flat. And against Concord, it's extremely easy just to get beat straight up by one of the deepest rosters, I think, at the top of CRL, which sets up Northwood versus Concord. And I genuinely don't know where to go with this matchup. So I'm just going to let straight up bias take me here. I'm going to say Concord wins because Cumberland versus Concord in the finals of Colleague Madness would be a potential future top of SEL matchup if Concord does join the league next season, as they are in the SEL region. So fully biased grand finals here between Concord and Cumberland. It's also a rematch of the CECC South finals. Went 6 games with Concord playing on straight fatigue after playing Boost on the Beach all day and then playing the CECC South bracket. So since they're coming in probably fairly fresh, I think they get the dub. I think Concord makes it, and I don't know if that is me selecting them, but Concord wins. That's who I'm saying takes it now. It's top Cumberland. I'll say it goes all the way to 7 this time around. Cumberland learned a thing or two in their CECC South bracket. But all that action kicks off Tuesday with the play-ins on my channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want the SEL play-in, 9 if you want the Great Lakes play-in, 7 if you want to watch State of the SEL beforehand. But then Wednesday and Thursday, 7 Eastern Time, both days for round 1 and then quarterfinals respectively on Wednesday and Thursday. Shout out to Colleague for putting this together. Really cool event. I'm excited to watch it, see what happens with it. Hopefully you enjoy my predictions video.